Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we present Micah Wood as part of the Wignall Museum's Home Edition, a series of curated artist talks, workshops, and discussions featuring artists and cultural workers. My name is Rebecca Trawick. I'm the director and curator of the Wignall Museum. The Wignall Museum is a teaching museum and interdisciplinary arts space that introduces Chaffey College students, faculty, staff, and community members to innovative contemporary art objects and ideas. By fostering critical thinking, visual literacy, discourse, and empathy, the museum seeks to enhance the intellectual and cultural life of our community. We want to take a moment to recognize that we're situated on the Rancho Cucamonga campus of Chaffey College, which resides on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tongva people. We offer our respect to the elders, both past, present, and future.
Hello, my name is Roman Stollenwerk. I'm the assistant curator at the Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art. Please note we are recording all sessions of Home Edition. All recorded programs in Home Edition will be transcribed and captioned. Please visit our website at www.chaffey.edu/Wignall to access recordings. We will post announcements to our email subscribers and social media when the videos are available on our site. Thank you.
And hi, everyone. My name is Andy Hadel. I'm the preparator at the museum and the studio tech for the Studio Arts Department here at Chaffey College. Along with Roman and Rebecca, I'm going to be assisting with today's Zoom session. Let me briefly share a quick breakdown of today's program. In a moment, we're going to have Micah Wood, and he will present for about a half an hour or so.
Thanks, Roman and Andy. So today we're pleased to introduce you all to Micah Wood. Micah is an artist living and working in Los Angeles. He works in a variety of media, including painting, sculpture, and performance. The imagery found throughout Wood's paintings oscillate between found images and advertising to automatic drawings and observational sketches. Wood's paintings lie in the nexus of abstraction and figuration and seek to create a distinctive vision of his environment. He was a co-director of City Limits Gallery in Oakland, California from 2016 to 2018, where he organized several solo and group exhibitions. Wood's work has been shown in solo and group exhibitions in Canada, Mexico, Russia, France, and California. Please see his full biography in the program guide on our website. Micah also has a special guest joining us today, Arthur Weiss. So he'll introduce him during his presentation. So please join me in welcoming Micah.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yes, thanks for the gracious introduction, Rebecca. I'm really excited for this next hour. I think it's gonna be really fun. And I've been teaching at Chaffey the past 2 years. I teach in the visual and performing arts department, and you can find me there. And I guess this kind of came about because I assign as my final project a zine for the students to do. And just in terms of the assignment, I think it's a really fun assignment that the students can really make their own while kind of like combining everything that we've talked about throughout the semester and fundamentals of 2D design. So it's a chance for them to really make something of their own and like can give to other students in the class and give to their family and friends. All right, the zine, or how to make a rad zine. So what is a zine? A zine, short for magazine or fanzine, is most commonly like a small circulation, self-published work of original or appropriated texts and images, usually reproduced via a photocopier. Usually zines are the product of a single person or a small group. Zines are typically self-published booklets sold cheaply or traded amongst friends, or in this case with my students, amongst their peers. It's kind of like a part of a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of subculture. And in a historical context, zines have been integral to various subcultures, including but not limited to science fiction, punk music, third wave feminism, and the Riot Girl movement. So, I see zines as an opportunity for students to kind of serve the intersection of maker, expert, and teacher, right? It's always fun for me to get the zines back from them and learn about either, something that they're interested in, I had no idea existed, like how to be one student did a zine about being a car influencer. Like you kind of work on cars and then you like can be like a popular YouTuber with like car people, I guess, I don't know, or like how to fly a drone, things I don't like know anything about, and it's like so fun to learn about. This semester someone did a fanzine about the film Donnie Darko, which I thought was really cool. So it's just kind of all across the board, and that's the kind of the fun of it is like they become the teacher and I become the student in a lot of ways. So students can tell their stories and share their knowledge through both images and texts, and share this learning in a kind of low cost, kind of easy produced fashion. Zines kind of first emerged in the United States, where the photocopier was invented, and kind of zines have always been more numerous here in this country. They were first kind of created in the science fiction fandoms of the 1930s, taking their name from fanzine, which is short for fan magazine. So these were kind of born out of, fans making these fan magazines for Star Trek, which is, I believe, a series of books, I think before the television show, if I'm not mistaken. So these kind of, just people that were really into science fiction and really into these science fiction Star Trek books decided to write their own kind of, homages to their books. And that's kind of, some people believe that's kind of the origin story, if you will. And it wasn't just Star Trek, this is from June 1940. Some people believe this potentially is one of the first kind of fanzines, which I love. I like science fiction, but it's like just like learning about new things, I think is like, and in a very low cost kind of way is something really cool about zines. I'm going to butcher the name, Chinese Dazabao, or kind of big character. I can't read that. Can anyone else? Is there? I think it's just on my screen. Anyway, these were kind of in the 60s, these kind of protest posters, and you can kind of see on the wall here these kind of big characters for the pro-democracy movement happening in China. So it's a kind of an extension of these are huge, maybe like huge zines in a way, and kind of going into even like a more different kind of substrate in terms of like a poster or a flyer even. And so to me, I think zine culture also kind of alludes itself to a wide variety of materials, including posters and, wheat pasting, kind of all about that. So yeah, zines are an incredibly powerful method of sharing stories and communicating ideas. Part of this comes from the format, which feels more casual than like a paper or a presentation, and less time intensive than like a full-on comic book. The tactile nature of drawing and creating the book is satisfying, right? Putting pen to paper and cutting and folding to make multiples is easy to do and quite accessible. And that's also why I think zines are such a great thing to do just in general, but also as an assignment. Because we are, especially during this pandemic, we are like are on our screens. We're like digital so much, right? It's like, when is the last time that you actually like put pen and paper to each other, and or pencil and or colored pencil and or collage material? Like there's something really nice about like working with your hands and creating something that isn't on a screen, that's completely void of pixels. All right. So one overarching, I think, commonality in zine culture is creating community. People who made and traded zines created communities by having similar values, interests, and I'm all about that. I think I was saying to some people before this, like collaboration is such a huge part of my practice, and I think it's a really valuable thing to do in the classroom and just to do in general. I think it like can give results that are way that you wouldn't expect and you might not get just by yourself. Yeah, just an example of like creating community with like zines. You might, this is like maybe back in the day, but you might not have known that the girl or guy sitting next to you in class was into the band Black Flag until they saw your zine on Black Flag on your desk, and they're like, "Whoa, man! Like, you're into Black Flag? Oh, me too." Or someone sees a Riot Girl zine, you have they know that you have similar values, right? You're fighting the patriarchy, you're against sexism, you're against racism, you're against bigotry, all these things that kind of Riot Girl movements and zines kind of stand for. And so, just little ways that zines kind of make community. So punk zines kind of followed the same guidelines as regular zines. They were self-written, they were self-published, they were self-distributed, and were made by fans of punk music. But they kind of had a more narrow focus that included, punk literature, reviews of albums or shows, gossip, social commentary, and news. Slash. Slash was a punk rock related fanzine published by Steve Samioff and Melanie Nissen in the United States from 1977 to 1980. The magazine was a large format tabloid focused on the LA punk scene. It was a pretty relatively wide distribution punk scene, and Slash helped kind of bring the LA underground scene to the attention of the rest of the world. And what's really cool about Slash is actually now the full archive is available to download and to look at online for free. Raymond Pettibone is kind of synonymous also with Black Flag, and any art historians and artists out there will know that name. He's known for his comic-like drawings with disturbing, ironic, or kind of ambiguous text. Pettibone's subject matter is sometimes violent, anti-authoritarian. From the late 1970s to the mid 1980s, he was closely associated with the punk rock band Black Flag and the record label SST, both of which were founded by his older brother, Greg. His drawings come out by the hundreds. He started to publish them as limited edition photocopy booklets, otherwise known as zines, in 1978. These are considered like the sum of his ideas and aesthetics. And yeah, they're really good. Check them out. I don't have a picture for this person I'm going to talk about next, but he would have been publishing these as well. His name is V. Vale, and he founded the publishing company Re/Search or Research. And he also founded the magazine Search and Destroy. He is very instrumental in the punk zine world. I mean, yeah, you can't really talk about punk zines in LA and the Bay Area and around the country without talking about V-Vale and Research. But he also published people like William S. Burroughs and J.G. Ballard, Genesis P-Orridge, and he's still around today. You can find him usually in a non-pandemic world at art book fairs with his booth for Research. He's quite the character. These are good examples of kind of what you want to kind of talk about in terms of like the aesthetics of zines. You know, look at what's going on here. There's not really a ton of like fine detail. It's more about kind of like getting it out there as quickly and as cheaply as possible. These are like appropriated newspaper, you know, cutouts and appropriated images that are kind of collaged onto a piece of paper and then photocopied, and then boom, it's done. So, you know, these are what zines used to be like and still are and will continue to be. Riot Grrrl zines were started in Washington, D.C., kind of Riot Grrrl Publishing in 1992. Riot Grrrl zines are often describe issues such as sexism, mental illness, homophobia, and vegetarianism. One sort of motto that Riot Grrrl zines had is the personal is always political. And you know, I think that's a great motto and kind of something that can go beyond zines. Around the same time, but a little bit before, Bikini Kill, the band you might have heard of, Kathleen Hanna, started with Kathy Wilcox and Billy Boredom Karen. Also, it was started as a zine first, Bikini Kill, and then from that, actually, the band formed. So given out at gigs and mailed to an ever increasing network of girls, the aesthetics of the earliest Riot Grrrl zines was sexy and subversive, but kind of what tends to be forgotten is the highlighted kind of underground cultural figures. You know, sometimes they would be like an homage to the artist and AIDS activist David Wojnarek. I always butcher his last name, who sadly passed away. You know, but other zines paid tribute to Audre Lorde. You know, and in a pre-internet world, Riot Grrrl, you know, spread mostly by paper, flyers, zines, stickers, and letters. Creating like an all-girl space was a key act, as was the creation of like an all-girl mosh pits at the front of gigs. I love this one. It's like talking about like how punk rock feminism rules. Okay, so it's like it's okay to be goofy. It's okay to like you know, have some pom poms and like, you know, maybe bring your pom poms to the punk rock mosh pit or whatever. You know, like it's okay to be goofy and dorky. So from conventions and gigs to tiny support groups, Riot Grrrl was about building connections and solidarity between teenage girls, sometimes loose-knit and sometimes tightly bonded. Riot Grrrl collectives acted as spaces for discussion and organizing, as well as goofing around and making up songs and community-produced zines. Got a coloring book. Another great idea for a zine is a coloring book. Very simple, very straight to the point. Makes a great gift. Just saying, a holiday gift to your loved ones this year. Create a coloring book zine. Why not? Great kind of example of a photocopy black and white zine where we have both. It's a great, it's a great example of both collage material and hand drawn material. Look at this. Nothing says expensive art book here. It says like this is like the DC March for Women's Lives and like activism and art and all these really cool things into like one zine. Yeah, I just love the graphicness too of zines, right? This like very much it's nothing to do with comics, but it does still have this kind of like very like an economy of means to it, of just pen and paper or pencil and paper. So here we kind of have a little bit of a teaser of kind of how we're going to be making our zines. This is kind of like called a foldy zine. It's a one sheet of paper, but it will be actually 8 pages. Another way is to actually, this would be like a 16-page paper, but 4 sheets of paper. So you have, this is what I do for my class. You have 4 sheets of paper, and it's very important you kind of keep the order. Otherwise, it's going to be, you'll get really crazy really fast. 4 sheets of paper, that's all you need. And then you have 16 pages of original art. And kind of when we're talking about these, we can think of this one's, for example, as a master copy where you don't staple it. So therefore you can kind of keep on copying these original pages over and over again. So when you make your zine, if you want to make, a multi-page zine, remember to always have like a master copy, and then you can make copies of your master copy. They can come in all sorts of shapes, size, formats, colors, and styles. Yeah, now would be a good time. I can kind of just pull up my zines I've done. So here we have, this is like my first zine I ever did. I was asked to participate in a art show slash like kind of zine show, and it was randomly enough at like the National Gallery of Moscow in Russia. My friend Alex Haubraun invited me to that. Thanks, Alex. So yeah, this was, she kind of left it open-ended to kind of do what I wanted to, but the first half is kind of like a photo kind of diary of just things at the time I was living in Paris, doing a residency. And so I kind of, just included text and some photos. It's a really cute cat that I saw in Morocco on top of some dried mint. And then there's documentation of previous exhibitions that I was in before this was published. Yeah, so it can kind of serve as both documentation as well. And what I kind of wanted to, we'll transition into Arthur is, I definitely have a background in books and zines, but being an artist, I'm kind of more interested in art zines and art books. And so that's kind of my background. The next one that I was doing was this zine here, New Drawings and Picture Poems. So one page is what I call these picture poems, and then one page is drawings, and I have another example of what I call picture poems. This was published this year for an art fair other places art fair. It's called Fellini, Bellini, and the Mime. And it's a risograph print done by Copa Press in the Bay Area. And yeah, so I think of these poems more as like a visual drawing, more of as like more of a drawing than a piece of text. You can kind of try to read the text, but it's very hard, and I kind of like that, where you kind of, the words become almost like shapes, and and sometimes it's kind of straightforward. Wi-Fi, password. So yeah, that's what I do. I make picture poems, usually with my zines. Some other zines, my friend Felicia made this one. It's like documentation of a choreographed dance that she was doing, along with text. A and an A. The dancer is making an A. And then I think kind of blurs the line, between like what is an art book and what is an art zine. And so I kind of wanted to kind of quick talk about that. But the art book is the artwork in itself. It's not a catalog or a monograph. They are, projects for the page. So, you can kind of try and figure out your own definition for an art zine / book. But, what I think of it is as it's made by an artist. The hand of the maker is evident. It's generally inexpensive, limited, but the editions are large. They are meant to be like democratically available. So an artist book can be purely visual or purely linguistic. Well, with that said, let's bring in Arthur, my friend Arthur Weiss. We know each other through the undergrad we went to, Earlham College. Arthur and I have been friends for many years. We were both living in the Bay Area, and now we both live in LA. And welcome, Arthur.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Hi, Micah. Hi, everyone. So, going on what everyone's been saying, my experience with zines has really kind of transcended from punk rock culture into art publishing. And I first got into zines in 1996. I got a copy of Maximum Rock and Roll, and that changed the trajectory of my life. It allowed me, to be in the underground. And I made zines all throughout my youth, and when I was in college, and I haven't made that much work in zines in the last few years, but I worked in fine press publishing and art publishing. I worked for SF MoMA, and I worked for the San Francisco Center for the Book, and I worked for the Book Club of California doing fine press printing and the like. And one of the really big things that I think about with art books and zine making is how individual it is, and how democratic it is, and how, I shouldn't say democratic, how just absolutely like for yourself, you can do whatever you want. That's the whole point of it, is like you're making a piece of art, and your art can just be words on a page, or it can be images, or it can be whatever you want, because it's yours. All you need is a photocopier, and you don't even need that. You just get a piece of paper. And it's like, here's an example. Like, this is a set of 4 different zine art books done by Lena Gustafson. you know, Micah and Peter Calderwell, and they're all hand bound, and they're all printed and beautiful. And honestly, you can do what you want. That's the beauty of it. It's a piece of art that you can hold in your hand and feel the energy from that piece be able to be absorbed into you. And that's what draws me to it. And it really takes away from, you know, just the snobbery that can be omnipresent in the art world, where it's like, you know, certain people are, you know, blue chip galleries are saying like, oh yeah, well, you know, this is who we're celebrating. But you know what, like, I'm going to make my own work, and that's DIY, and that's punk rock, and that's what's so beautiful. And, you know, I mean, I think like, I mean, I have copies. Like, here's a great example. This is Disease Pariah Press. This was done in San Francisco in the late 1980s and early 1990s, of people who were dying of AIDS. Everyone who made the zine was dying at that point, and they made, it's like funny and it's artistic, and they recorded albums, and they did whatever they wanted to do. And this is, you know, a piece of art. I mean, you know, it's absolutely phenomenal. And then, you know, you get, let's see, you got I got so much stuff. Like here, this is, you know, before Silicon. This is during, you know, Silicon Valley. Like, you know, you get to have memory. You get to create, you know, your own set of memories for other people. You get to see what exists in other people's heads, and that's so beautiful. And you know, Micah, any questions? Anything?
No, that's great. That's I mean, yeah, I'm glad you showed those, because those are really good examples of both zines and art books, because your background is in both of those. You know, these, yeah, like Arthur was just, I'll piggyback on that. That's, I think, the genius of the zine is that it's the thing it's in your hands. You've made it, and then you can have it just be one and done, or it can be a huge, you know, distribution. It can be seen by so many people, and you can use any kind of materials you want. You can, I like the binding that you showed, that stitch binding. That's a great example of, you know, just multiple ways that one can bind a book. You can use staples, you can use thread, you don't have to use anything.
Yeah, it's what, you know, what you want. Here, this is what shitty poems that I wrote when I was, age 16 to 18. You know, it's, you know, people put out their memories, and people's memories are art. And like, you know, it begs the question, you know, it's like, who gets to say what art is and who doesn't? What we hold, what we see, how we see it. So
yeah, thanks, Arthur.
You're welcome.
So these are art books by the artist Dieter Roth. He was a Swiss artist, but primarily lived in Iceland, Germany, and America. You know, he's notorious for food pieces. You know, he would make these zines out of anything, and he kind of became known for these food pieces involved pressing or squashing his terms of choice, such ingredients as chocolate, lard, sausage, and fruits and vegetables into his books, in additions to create works that would putrefy and disintegrate. So, you know, it was like such a cool kind of anti-capitalistic way to think about art, right? And he would sign his name. He would sign his name Rot, because he understood the pronunciation was kind of a funny thing in terms of these food zines, these food books. You know, I love Diderot as an artist, and especially his books. They're very just like, I made it. I don't care if you like it. And he made hundreds, probably maybe a thousand. He made so many. I just want to briefly touch on this is kind of these briefcase pieces, or these briefcase books that he made. So everyone talked about, this is a quote from the gallery. Everyone talked about it. It was probably one of the more talked about exhibitions in town. This was, sorry. His first, this is such a good story. His first US gallery show was in 1970 at the Eugenia Butler Gallery on La Cienega here in Los Angeles. He installed his first, you know, he was a widely celebrated, huge artist in Europe, but never shown in America. He installed 37 suitcases full of cheese and left them to rot in the summer of 1970. Everyone talked about it. It was probably one of the more talked about exhibitions in town. People were, of course, outraged and intrigued by it. It was very powerful. You walked along this alley into the gallery. You could smell it from La Cienega, and it was a good 100 yards from the gallery. You know, so these were considered art pieces or art books to him. And this was his very first, this is his splash into America. We can't talk about Diderot without talking about Ed Richey. This is a great, Ed Richey is a living artist here in Los Angeles. So Ed Richey is known for his paintings, but also his books. And this is kind of like an example of one of his books where he documented the Sunset Strip and the gas stations on there. One of the most iconic, maybe, art books published by an American artist. It's incredible. I think LACMA has the print. Martin Kippenberger, one of my favorite artists. This is called Cycle Buildings. And, you know, one thing to remember is when you're at a college, a university, you know, an art school, oftentimes the library will have original copies of these art books, and they won't tell you that they're there, but you can ask, and sometimes they will let you put on gloves and actually hold and handle these original editions. So I've actually you know, flipped through one of these cycle building books, and yeah, there is no text. It's just like an inventory of architectural detail, odd things, juxtaposed with sculptures and portraits of the artist. Kind of a deep cut for art book people and art zine people. Ulysses Carrion. This one is called The Drum. Ulysses Carrion was a Mexican conceptual artist, but he kind of relocated to Amsterdam and lived there until he died. The Drum was one of Ulysses' early linguistic exercises in English. The artist fragments the names of musical instruments to express a sound. So, you know, he would just write a sound on the page, and then the reader was supposed to, you know, kind of reenact that sound or say aloud, or, you know, make that sound that was on that page, or that word that's on that page, right? So the trumpet, you kind of make the sound of a trumpet, or what does the sound of a pet do? Barbara Kruger, part of the Pictures generation. Originally, this was a poster. Turned into a photographic silkscreen print. Used a lot of text in her work. Very subversive. Talked about themes of power, consumerism, and sexuality. Jenny Holzer, an artist that was also part of the Pictures generation. Very similar. Uses a lot of text to talk about power and things like that. This is kind of randomly thrown in. This is another example of a Diderot book. Abuse of power comes as no surprise. kind of a collection of Jenny Holzer's text pieces. Zines are also, kind of becoming very mainstream. This is a zine published by Kanye West for the Yeezy collection. So, if Kanye does it, it's cool. It's reached that level. I just really quick shout out to some publishers in the Bay Area where I got really into zines. These are Jeffrey and Gabe, who are from Unity Press. They put out a bunch of really amazing zines and skateboards, really celebrating queer culture. They primarily only publish kind of POC artists and queer artists. Tiny Splendor, my friends Max and Sana do this. They're also an amazing press in the Bay. I don't know if we have time for this, but real quick, I'm going to demonstrate, because this is part of the workshop, how to make your very own zine, a rad zine. So you'll have your piece of paper, okay? You're going to fold it lengthwise. Back up. We're going to fold it the other way. All right. Fold it the other way. All right. Then you're going to fold it this side in half. Now this side in half until they kind of meet in the middle. Go crisp edges. Gonna run out of time. I'm so sorry. All right, fold it back again to this. And take your scissors and cut halfway to the middle right here. All right, cut. Gonna fold it back out again, fold it down, and then accordion style into each other. Okay, and then you have your very own zine. And now you can start making your own zines.
Well, clearly we need more time to have a zine party. Look at each other's bookshelves, discuss zine history and culture, and share great stories. Just a few little bits of housekeeping. Roman did put a link to a quick survey in the chat. So if y'all would take a minute to do that, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks everybody for coming. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you, everyone.